Benin City, formerly Edo, sprang up by around 1000 BC in a forest that could be easily defended. The dense vegetation and narrow paths made the city easy to defend against attacks. The rainforest, which Benin City is situated in, helped in the development of the city because of its vast resources: fish from rivers and creeks, animals to hunt, leaves for roofing, plants for medicine, ivory for carving and trading, and wood for boat building that could be exploited. A series of walls marked the incremental growth of the city from 850 AD until its decline in the 16th century. Excavations at Benin City have revealed that it was already flourishing around 1200 to 1300 CE. In 1440, Oba Edouard, also known as Edward the Great, came to power and expanded the borders of the former city-state. Hold on. Did you know that on this channel, I don't just make history videos, but I do a lot of different geography videos, including GeoGuessr guides. If I hit 500 subscribers, I will make the ultimate GeoGuessr beginner guide, which will give tips about every single country in the entire world. So, let's hit that goal and get that video. The Portuguese, who arrived in an expedition led by this guy in 1485, would refer to it as Benin, and the center would become known as Benin City. The Oba had become the mount of power within the region. In the 15th century, Oba Edouard is credited with turning Benin City into a city-state from a military fortress built by the Ogisos, protected by moats and walls. It was from this bastion that he launched his military campaigns and began the expansion of the kingdom from the Edo-speaking heartlands. Excavations also uncovered a rural network of earthen walls, 6,000 to 13,000 kilometers long, that would have taken an estimated 150 million man-hours to build, and must have taken hundreds of years to build. These were apparently raised to mark out territories for towns and cities. 13 years after Edouard's death, tales of Benin's splendors lured more Portuguese traders to the city gates. In the early 16th century, Oba Esigi expanded the region eastwards after defeating an invasion and attempted conquest of Benin by the Igala kingdom. Benin gained political strength and ascendancy over much of what is now Midwestern Nigeria. Its wealth grew through its extensive trade, especially with the interior of the region, although the trade with Europeans that developed from the late 15th century onwards in pepper, slaves, cloth, and ivory provided a smaller additional supplement to Benin's wealth and its economy. A civil war broke out around 1689, around the time that Oba Ewukipi ascended to the throne. Ies Ode and lower-ranked members of the royal administrative revolted against their superiors' attempts to control them. The Oba brought in troops from another city, but could not defeat the rebels, and Benin City was sacked. The war continued for roughly 10 years before negotiations brought them to an end. Ekwapi's succession, however, was disputed between his two sons and his close ally. A traditional chief who bore the title Izomo eventually prevailed over the younger son and his ally. Cleanup and reconquest of rebel areas, however, took another 10 years. With renewed stability in the kingdom, and Oba Akensua benefited from trade with Europeans and was to be the richest Obas in the kingdom's history. Benin's economy was thriving in the early to mid-19th century with the development of the trade in palm oil and the continuation of the trade in textiles, ivory, and other resources. To preserve the kingdom's independence, the Oba gradually banned the export of goods from Benin until the trade was exclusively in palm oil. By the latter half of the 19th century, Britain desired a closer kingdom with the Kingdom of Benin, as British officials were increasingly interested in controlling trade in the area and assessing the kingdom's palm oil, kola nut, ivory, and potentially rubber resources. The kingdom resisted being a British protectorate throughout the 1880s, but the British remained persistent. Progress was made in 1892 during the visit of Vice-Consul Henry Galway. This mission was the first official visit after Burton's. Moreover, It would also set in motion the events to come that will lead to Oba Ovonvronwen's fall from power. Some British consul Richard Burton visited Benin in 1862. He wrote of Benin as a place of gratuitous barbarity which stinks of death, a narrative which was publicized in Britain and increased support for the territory's colonization. In spite of this, the kingdom maintained its independence and was not visited by another representative of Britain until 1892, when Henry Galway, the British vice-consul of the Oil Rivers Protectorate, later the Niger Coast Protectorate, visited Benin City, hoping to open up trade and ultimately annex Benin Kingdom and transform it into a British protectorate. A British delegation departed from the Oil Rivers Protectorate in 1897 with the stated aim of negotiating with the Oba of Benin regarding the trade agreement, which they felt he was not keeping. The leader of the delegation, James Robert Phillips, had asked his superiors in the British Foreign Office for permission to lead an armed British expedition to depose the Oba of Benin, not long before the expedition, but left for Benin City with a diplomatic delegation. Before receiving a reply to his request, perceiving this to be an attempt to depose the Oba's generals unilaterally ordered an attack on the delegation as it was approaching Benin City, all but 2 of whom were killed. A punitive expedition was launched in response, and a 1,200 men strong force, under the command of Sir Harry Rawson, captured Benin City. They deliberately sought out and destroyed certain areas of the city, including those thought to belong to the chiefs responsible for the ambush of the British delegation, and in the process, a fire burnt the place and surrounding quarters, which the British claimed was accidental. The British occupied Benin, which was absorbed into the British Niger Coast Protectorate, and eventually into British colonial Nigeria. A general emancipation of slaves followed in the wake of British occupation, but Britain also imposed a system of forced labor in Benin and its surrounding areas, as it did throughout other parts of southern Nigeria. The British launched an additional operation in 1899 called the Benin Territories Expedition against rebels still holding out against the British. The British burnt down numerous towns and destroyed farms in an attempt to starve the rebels into submission. After the 1899 expedition, military resistance in the former Kingdom of Benin against the British occupied ceased. The remaining people in Benin who hated the British from that century went out western into modern-day Benin and joined their old relatives in the Kingdom of Dahomey, which is the ancestor of the modern Kingdom of Benin, which had been flourishing in the 18th and 19th centuries. According to tradition, at the beginning of the 17th century, 3 brothers vied for the Kingdom of Alada, which, like neighboring Wida, had grown rich on the slave trade. When one of the brothers won control of Alada, the other 2 fled. One went southeast and founded Porto Novo, the modern capital of Benin. One the east coast of Wida, the other, Doaklin, went north and founded the Kingdom of Abomi, core of the future Dahomey. They all paid tribute to the powerful Yoruba Kingdom of Oyo to the east. The kingdom was a form of absolute monarchy unique in Africa. Dahomey was organized for war, not only to expand its boundaries, but also to take captives as slaves. Slaves were either sold to the Europeans in exchange for weapons or kept to work the royal plantations that supplied food for the army and court. From approximately 1680, a regular census of population was taken as a basis for military conscription. Female soldiers, called Amazons by the Europeans, served as royal bodyguards when not in combat. After about 1840, however, the kingdom's fortunes changed as Britain succeeded in putting an end to the overseas slave trade. Gizu accomplished a smooth transition to palm oil exports. Slaves, instead of being sold, were kept to work palm plantations. Palm oil was far less lucrative than slaves, however, as an economic decline followed under Gizu's successor, Gaye, when the French won control of Porto Novo and Cotonou and attracted coastal trade there. Commerce at Wida collapsed. After the accession of Behanzin, hostilities were precipitated. Since the French in the Berlin Conference wanted modern-day Benin, they led an expedition in 1892 and they defeated the Dahomeans and established a protectorate. His former kingdom was absorbed into the French colony of Dahomey, with its capital at Porto Novo. French Dahomey administration remained over the area from 1900 until August 1st, 1960, when the country gained independence and took the name Republic of Dahomey. In 1975, the name of the country was changed from Republic of Dahomey to Benin, named after the ancient city of Benin in modern-day Nigeria. That is it for the history of Benin. This one was a little confusing since there are two different major histories, one being of Dahomey and the other being about Benin in Benin City, but we got through it. Now, time for stats. The area of Benin is 114,000 square kilometers. The population of Benin is 13.4 million. The GDP of Benin is 17.4 billion USD, and the GDP per capita is 1.3 thousand USD dollars. And that is it for the simplified history of Benin.